Netrunners, your timer starts now.
Okay, and welcome to, well, I guess we're calling it at the moment, but it may change, in which case you'll never hear this intro. My name's Luke. Joining me here is Ryan, both of us Sydney Netrunners.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in.
And we're looking at Sydney Nationals from August 2016. Crimson Dust was hot legal as of 9 days in. We've got Chris on the left and Lachlan on the right. Chris, one of our local favourites, Lachlan down from Canberra. And we've got the canonically peak Netrunner lineup of Whizzard vs SYNC. Have you played with Lachlan before, Ryan? We're going to just assume you've played with Chris all the time.
Yeah, I've seen plenty of Chris around. I don't think I've played Lachlan very much, if at all. And the matchup here is pretty interesting too, actually. So we've got Whizzard vs SYNC, as you said, but this was a bit of a different Whizzard, which popped up just around the time of Nationals. This is the we're beginning to see. Chris is putting down same old thing and same old thing again.
Opening with two same old things is degeneracy of the highest order.
That's right. And so as we're about to see, Chris is building into the Mars for Martians build, which I believe you played around a little bit with in the lead up to Nationals.
I played around with a little bit. It's one of those great moves where it goes all in, or you sit there durdling forever. Chris has opened with just heavy draw. He's done both. He's had so much worse so early. So assuming he's going to be looking for those pieces, he's going to want Mars for Martians. He's going to want counter surveillance, and most importantly, he's going to want a way to self-tag himself, which, as opposed to self-tagging someone else, I suppose, which leads him into an interesting position against SYNC. Puts him in an interesting position against SYNC because obviously tags are basically where SYNC lives and breathes. Got him.
No, changed his mind. I think he's realised the employee strike isn't really that useful against SYNC, particularly since he's going to want to hold on to those tags eventually.
Yeah. And we've got Wireless Net Pavilion coming down, which is interesting. The other thing, we've got SYNC with a pretty heavy credit lead at the moment, which opens up hard-hitting news very early. And now we've got Joshua B, which is obviously going to start those self-tags rolling. And Chris doesn't want to be in a position where his precious resource can simply get through.
That's right, and we've just seen Lachlan playing out the first breaking news, so he's already off to a pretty fast start with that pile of money and one breaking news scored.
Which, failing any other kind of meat damage protection, if another agenda puts him straight into 24/7 boom range.
And the Mars for Martian build, what sort of meat damage protections does it run, if any?
I don't know about Chris's specifically. Quite often you've got Jirognu Mercs, which you quite often just play to give you the tag, but also if you're already in kind of tag hell and you've got Wireless Net Pavilion down, it functions pretty well with giving you a lot of counters because it gives you one counter per tag, and you also have to trash through every other resource to get to it. So I imagine something like that. Just in general, they kind of gives you enough of a buffer to build up, but it does tend to quite explosively come out of the gate when it can.
Yeah, sure.
So we're seeing we've got the exchange over in Lachlan's hand.
And I think I saw an NAPD as well. Is that a second exchange?
That's an all-seeing eye, which could be very relevant. I think the way that interacts with Jirognu Mercs is that would survive, but you would kill every other resource on the board. Puts in an interesting.
Okay. So to save you from being flatlined, maybe.
Yeah. Chris also got an Abellis in hand, which is a pretty strong bit of meat damage protection if you just hold all the cards.
Yeah, sure.
MCA Informing coming down on Josh B. He's ratted us out.
And so do you think Chris will get rid of Josh B at this early stage? I'm sure the threat of all-seeing eye, closed accounts, is just too high, right?
Yeah, I think so. He's not set up. He's not really in a position to protect himself. I can't remember whether or not it functions as one additional tag. I think it does in terms of where Paparazzi doesn't. Yeah, so he's just playing through it. He's taking a Bellis. He's going to run and see a card, which is going to get him a draw. And Inject may well get him just 4 cards to punch through here. We're not seeing what they are, but we've got an MK Ultra down, which will go away.
And in usual style for Chris, I actually can't quite make out his credit pool, but I assume he's got enough to not get hard-hitting used at this point, right?
Yeah, look, we're going to have to accept that ragging on Chris's board state will be a theme of many of these podcasts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so he's chosen to just wear the MCA, take out the Ibellis and draw into it, which I haven't counted his hand at the moment, but it looks like that puts him fairly safe of a cheeky boom. Well, a cheeky big brother boom.
Right.
It's interesting how it plays out from here.
Yeah, right. So he's going for HQ, and he's finding Ulting Eye, I think that was. Yeah.
Which is going to give him some subtle hints.
And that was a hard-hitting use he just drew.
Yep. Which Chris also saw off R&D, so he knows that's the thing. It's
So Chris is sitting on one tag, some amount of money, and then we see the All-Seeing Eye. Yeah.
It played out the All-Seeing Eye. Yeah. The tagging, the way these two decks function in terms of where they want tags is always interesting because Sync wants you to kind of give up and go into tag hell, but that's basically functions to just accelerate Chris's game plan. Chris drops a card, smooth and professional Netrunner play as always.
And so, so the Master Martians deck is wanting to reach a state where it just has a lot of tags and gets big digs through the deck. But how good is that against Sync? I mean, it's got Quantum Cats, which would just score those for Sync. Is there much else? I mean, I suppose everything else it can be stolen, right?
Well, yeah, there are a couple of hurdles. One will be because it tends to fluctuate on credits pretty hard. So NAPD is probably also a problem.
Yep.
The place you don't want to be in with this deck is where you access a bunch of cards and don't win out on that turn because it turns exchange on very hard from there. Because if he hits 3 GFIs just to immediately lose them, especially if he's additionally giving the core player Quantum Kitties or something.
Yep.
It also tends to have an interesting relationship with its money because obviously it'll Master Martian's priority to get the credits it needs to be able to land that massive counter surveillance, but any kind of resistance on R&D, stuff like there's been Sync players going around with universal connectivity fee, or just generally heavily taxing ice to kind of make that ability, because you can't partially pay through counter surveillance, you have to pay the full amount of tax.
Yeah.
So it needs a lot of money and it burns a lot of money very fast. Chris is getting very rapidly set up from that early ASI too. He's got Josh B, he's got Wild Nephilim, he's got Fall Guy. So even after that start, he's quite interestingly looking back at where he was.
Yeah, that's right. And I was just looking at, on the Sync side, Lachlan has a double ice remote set up, which I suppose it is a direction that Sync can go. I don't always see it if they're trying to rush out the early breaking users, but maybe he thinks he can just rush out and score.
It's very rare to see. Yeah, it's very rare to see a Sync player kind of build a remote, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel he probably feels a lot safer on Centrals because he knows he's just got to be able to punch these out early. If Lachlan's kind of au fait with this deck, he's going to imagine God of War is going to be a primary breaker, so Chris isn't going to be able to gamble on too many early remote accesses.
And there's we saw MK Ultra, and it's certainly running God of War. Is it likely to run much other icebreakers?
Probably just enough to get by. I imagine Conspiracy Breakers are probably the order of the day. I haven't really seen much else. It's usually like 3 God of Wars because in multiples they can start racking up the tags quite quickly.
Yeah, right.
And then Conspiracy Breakers just to get by.
Yeah, sure. All right, so we've seen the resistor on R&D, which will slow Chris down a bit there.
Well, not having a breaker also probably a big one there.
Well, that too.
He also has the money to kind of boost a trace in everything. And it's also, Chris doesn't want to be building up towards single accesses. It's just not part of the game plan.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Chris is running on that single advanced thing in the remote. Yeah. We have a data board.
That's going to be a fun time for this deck.
And you don't always see that in sync. That's an interesting include. It's a good one. Very effective at locking your runner out for at least a little while.
It's just such a very expensive card, which makes because sync quite often needs as much money as it can to lean into that credit advantage to kind of turn on hard hitting use, and Data Ward's just too expensive for that a lot of the time. But in this matchup, it works just fine because there's never going to be a point where Chris is not tagged.
I think I just saw it's 20. That's right. He's already sitting on 3 tags, and he's got Joshua B rolling. Yep.
Given Chris is already on 3 tags, and
but I'm pretty.
And he's now seeing the 24/7.
Yeah.
I think given Chris is already on 3 tags and is going to be Joshua being for the conceivable future, I don't think 24/7 tagging is too much of a concern for him.
No.
Especially now with this siphon. And I got to question that.
Is that a data?
I have to even question the res.
Yeah, I think when Chris is on 3 tags, he's playing the siphon, he's probably decided just to keep the tags at this point. But and this leaves Lachlan.
There's
broke.
a certain argument that he was doing it to. I'd say there's an argument that he's using it to kind of duck the value on the siphon, but even then, like, that just wipes you out.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch the credits going into that.
I think he went down to 4 and then lost the 4 off the siphon, so the best you can.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. Because, Chris is already on 6. Like, he probably would have even if Lachlan went down to 2, he would have fired the siphon just for the tag value.
Yeah. Okay.
IPO.
So Lachlan
is an IPO. He's
surely just looking for. I was about to say Lachlan's looking for the boom, but now I see that Chris has an enormous hand size thanks to Obelisk.
Obelisk helping out pretty much. You have to even start considering a value boom, which wouldn't be the end of the world, just to try and hit out some of these Martians being a key one, but also counter surveillance and that kind of thing, because they're going to stay in hand until Chris is ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the smartest play, but in the position Lachlan is starting to get into, it may be the play he needs. So we've seen another exchange. Well, no, it's the same exchange that Chris is still seeing.
So an interesting question here, I suppose, is whether the sync deck is running psychographics. It's probably not. I don't think it's a common include in sync these days.
Not that I've seen. Well, it depends on his build. Like the NAPD kind of hints more towards it's more of the econ disparity kind of build, where you're leading more into hard-hitting use and you basically you want to kill. You never want to have to score out. The data board's obviously something different in that regard. But even then, like, being down to 2 credits doesn't open up too much of a scoring plan.
No. And it's actually, I think, going to be quite hard for Lachlan to recover from this point. He's only got the Data Raven protecting HQ. Chris has 2 same old things in the bin, but he has more siphons in the deck, I assume.
Well, I was about to say, that will help immensely. Delicious sweeps is exactly what you want at this point.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
For 9? Yes, there was a sweeps for 9.
For 9 profit? Wow.
Again, it's those kind of interactions which make this kind of sync versus counter surveillance play really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think Lachlan just tries to jam out an agenda behind that data ward? I mean, if Chris doesn't have paperclip lurking around, you can't get past it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even then, just the money required, because Chris is going to bounce up and down based on purely master martial. Okay, we've got another siphon coming down. Which, again, that data raven is just giving Chris exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
On the psychographics build for it wouldn't be a bad include. I think if you were expecting a lot of this in the meta, it would get you out of these kind of holes. But it's just the number of...
That's right. I mean, I don't think Sync...
Yeah, pure boom sync doesn't, but it...
I was going to say, I don't think sync runs Beal much these days, but at least to score a GFI, it's not a bad use.
Oh, yeah, this style of sync definitely hasn't used Beal for some time, but it's just such a great include just for exactly these kind of positions. But usually, like, sync kind of is normally predicated on if you get to this point, you're just trying to kill them, and something you'd probably be more hoping for something like a best defense on the Obelisk or some other way to try and take apart Chris's board state. Okay, so we've got a blacklist coming down, which is interesting.
All right, so he's got the blacklist down.
We've seen a little bit of deja vu for things like the Mars for Martians and counter surveillance out of his deck, so it could probably help in that regard.
Plus whatever conspiracy breakers have ended up in the bin as well. But I think it may just be MK Ultra at this point. Nope, but no. Doesn't res the ice. Blacklist gets trashed.
That's interesting. So you wonder what the ice actually was.
Probably, I'm assuming nothing that would help if he didn't res it, although it may have just been too expensive.
It was a deja vu for counter surveillance, yeah.
Sure, okay.
So Chris is already on what's looking to be like, say, 12, maybe 13 tags there, and yeah, okay, here we go.
Yep. So he's got the counter surveillance down. He does need to get past the resistor.
Yeah, so that's going to be quite a bit of strength, and he's going to need to pay the iron price essentially for all his tags once he gets there.
I don't think he quite has the money to do it at this point, does he?
Little putting it down before he does.
He's going
to say like, putting it down before you're ready to go.
Yeah,
but he's hit the liberated once just to try.
I'd be surprised if he played it out if he didn't have the cash. Okay.
The question is, he'd almost be tempted to try and let the resistor fire and try to beat the trace that way.
It could well be cheaper, particularly since Lachlan isn't going to be that keen to spend his money on this.
Which I think he may have just done, because he definitely didn't pay the amount of money to get through the strength on that resistor. God of War is not what you want to pumping.
That's true.
Crashing Howard. Just dig now.
So Chris isn't likely to win off this dig, and he's on no agenda points.
He hits the boom though, which is telling. He's on no agenda points, and a GFI right here, especially we've seen the exchange in hand would just help Lachlan at this point. Especially if we do, as we said, Archangel, which could be interesting.
Oh.
I'm not sure.
I could bounce the Obelisk.
The Obelisk wouldn't be a bad play. I don't think there's anything with like a lot of intrinsic value that's built up. Like the God of War, maybe.
Yeah, you know what? We'll go with the.
Yeah, actually, if Chris is on low enough cash, could Lachlan bounce the Obelisk? Chris drops his hand and then he dies to a boom. Is that possible?
It's not impossible, actually. So Lachlan has the cash for that, but would have to have the boom in hand already. Yeah, so he's hit the God of War.
He would, yeah. Okay, so God of War is gone.
Okay, so we're continuing on this big.
No agendas.
No. And there's the cat, as we said.
Oh, yeah.
2 cats. So we do have a deal.
Oh, we do have a deal in there. So maybe we do have a psychographics. Maybe.
Yeah, we do have probably a stronger plan than I might have imagined. And the beauty of Obelisk, of course, draws up a whole pile of cards off that counter surveillance. So it's only just going to further Chris's combo at this point.
I'm going to have a interesting time, so let's go discuss.
And I expect that was possibly why Chris was going as early with the counter surveillance as he was, because it basically accelerated so well. That's
right. So it wasn't without its risks, though. Like, so if one of those agendas he'd stolen had been a GFI, he now would lose. But it's what his deck does. I don't think he has much of a...
if you wanted to sit there and play, remote footsies past the data ward, it wasn't going to go so well for him.
I think he just counted out a hand size of 18.
14 tags.
So we've got the Mars for Martians. We'll presumably have a Dean Lister or something. Yep, okay, has to do the exchange.
Okay.
Not the best value, but it makes sense
Versus Sync.
because you're not really going to survive that again. Closed accounts is interesting. That's definitely not what Chris wants.
Yeah,
Not what Chris wants.
that'll slow Chris down.
Mars for Martians coming straight back, obviously, especially after that kind of draw. Yep, and there we go.
Yes. Yep.
Lachlan does the traditional hand gesture of one Mars for Martianing past the closed accounts.
I can't forget my attack.
So Lachlan needs 1 point to win it. Or
Yeah, he's on 6 there.
yes, just the one.
Siphon, not so good.
Yeah.
Going to make, as we discussed, the psychographics play a little harder.
So, done my Willis trigger. 3 run 8.
And it also, more importantly, gives Chris the econ he needs to start bouncing back. Just, yeah, you've seen the 24/7 again, not a lot of use to him.
Yeah, because Chris is already back up to
What's that ice?
what looks like at least 12, probably more. No, I didn't see it.
It's not looking great for Lachlan here, but... Oh, and the counter surveillance comes down.
Yeah,
It had a little bit...
this has got to be.
You'd
This has got
have
to be
to,
game.
you'd have to think so. With a little bit more econ, he might have been able to pull out of that.
I'm just going to cash it.
And 6 points is 6 points, but here we go.
Although, if he hits the QPM,
Hits a third QPM would be
I think there's
wonderful
one
for
more in
him.
the deck. Yeah. Okay, this is quite risky, but
Yep.
Nope.
There we go.
Jackson.
yeah. So
Trash
he finds and
another
trashes Jackson. Yeah.
Oh, it's Archangel.
It's an Archangel
Yeah.
again.
Doesn't have the money to
Doesn't
fire.
have money to fire. Yep.
Nope.
Oh. GFI, which Lachlan would have loved for it to hit the first time round.
Nope.
Absolutely.
Breaking news.
Oh. And that's game. If I'm not mistaken, they're doing the agenda dance.
And I think Lachlan was just saying
Yeah.
that if he'd hit the GFI the first time.
Yeah.
And nothing
yeah,
in hand.
yeah.
Nothing in hand, which definitely didn't help him. Like, he was close enough that... Ooh. Astro at the bottom of the deck, never what you want to see. Oh, it was a close one, but
No.
just those repeated digs, even after the first one, basically accelerating Chris to the point where he could just hit harder.
I think
That's right. But that's a fun matchup to watch, actually. I mean, there's counterplay on the sync side to all of Chris's tricks. The kill plan kind of went out the window, but there are still other ways to win.
When both sides are dealing with tags so heavily, it's basically like a fight in a burning building.
drawn all my Mars for Martians.
All right. Well, that's the first of our recordings for the Swiss from 2017 Nationals.
Yeah, we'll join you again shortly. Thank you.